Hi everybody, it's good to see you. As Jordan said on Sunday, we're in a new sermon series about a discipleship pathway. This week we're going to talk about presents, which seems a little odd.
Like presents, like in gifts?
Not in gifts, but in presence as in being there.
Oh, presents as in being there.
Which is an odd one to talk about as we isolate and social distance.
Sanctuary's empty.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I thought in this time that I might tell you the story of the great canoe race in 1979.
Ooh, I'm excited.
I teased you a little bit a number of weeks ago when we talked about canoeing the whitewater of the Durango River, right?
Yeah.
So this is a continuation of that story in some ways. So as I said, Will and I were accomplished canoeists. We considered ourselves the best on the river. We were good. As I said, we could park a 17-foot canoe in an 8.5 by 11-inch envelope. We were really good. We were out on the river all the time, and we could do things nobody else could do. And Will, for the most part, he was the power of the operation. Will would sit up front, and he had that strength in his stroke and in his rowing that would propel us down the river, but also upriver. Because we never set a car downriver, we always went downriver and canoed back up. So we needed that power of Will up front. And I was in the back. I was the finesse of the operation, right? So I knew the C stroke and the J stroke, the S stroke, and the inversions of all of those, and I even created my own stroke, the Schultz flare. Right? It was kind of an inverted S with a kick and a splash at the end. It was a beautiful thing. But while Will and I knew that we were the best canoeists on the river, nobody else did. Because canoeing's not really known as a spectator sport, right? So we had to rely on ourselves to know that we were the best until Dallas County in the summer of 1979 said they were going to have a canoe race down the Raccoon River. This was our chance to show everybody that we were the best on the river and nobody could beat us. So on the day, we showed up on the riverbank, and the riverbank was just crowded with canoes, 20 or 25 canoes, and they were stacked on the bank and full of people. So Will and I, we just left our canoe on top of the car back in the parking lot. We walked down to the riverbank and we listened to the instructions about the race, and then the gun fired. All these people ran to their canoes. Will and I, we walked back up to the car slowly, untied our canoe off the top of the car, and brought it back down to the river to start our race. And you would think that would be a mistake, but you forget it. Will and I are the best, and we know what we're doing. In fact, we weren't the last ones in the river. There was still one canoeist, or one couple were trying to get their canoe into the river without getting their feet wet, and were having quite a hard time at it. Another canoe was out in the middle of the river, but they were just going around in circles, right? Another canoe, they got down river about 10 feet and ran into a tree, and were stuck in a tree. So even while Will and I took that time to go up to the shore, we had plenty of time to get started. And we put our canoe in the river, and we started going down. Right? It wasn't too long before we passed another canoe, and then another canoe. And like the Raccoon River, like many rivers, there can be these sand dunes that are just underneath the water that you can't see. And we got up to one canoe, and they were stuck on the sandbar, and they were pushing, and they were trying to shove themselves off. Will and I just drive our canoe right up on top of the sandbar. We jump out of the canoe. We run alongside of the canoe. And when we get to the end, we jump in and we just start paddling again. We don't let those little things upend us, right? So we were passing these canoes left and right. And we were having a great day. And anytime we saw anybody on the shore, we would show them how good we were.
Of course.
Because with Will up front, he would get tired on one side of the canoe and he would yell, "Switch," Right? So when Will said switch, we would both throw our oars up into the air and they would do 2 flips, we'd catch them and never miss a beat. Every time somebody was up on the shore, Will would say switch, we'd throw those paddles up in the air, catch them and keep going, and we were loving the applause. It was great. And we kept going downriver. Will was looking out for the trees and the snags in the river, and but that Schultz flare was getting us around all those obstacles. We were having a good day. We passed all those canoes except one. We saw this canoe about 50 yards in front of us. And they were just moseying, right? Just like a lazy day on the river. They were just moseying. Will and I knew it was the last canoe. So Will, he starts digging, and I'm in the back, digging, and we're catching up. We pull alongside of this canoe, and they look over at us, and they start digging. And they start paddling hard, and they just take off. Will and I were quite confused, as I imagine you. How could they outdo us? Well, it wasn't too long because they were amateur canoeists that they got tired and they slowed down a little bit. And Will and I kept digging and we got up to them and we just kind of got in their wake and we were starting to eye their boat. How could they do this? How could they outbeat us? They must have a motor someplace, right? So we got up alongside the canoe and we were taking a look at the canoe to see what it was. These people had the audacity to bring a racing canoe to a canoe race. I don't know if you ever knew that they made such a thing.
No.
But a racing canoe, it has a wide bottom, very flat bottom with no keel, so it just sits right on top of the water and glides on the water. While Will and I had that Grumman 17-foot aluminum canoe, which had a deep bottom and a deep keel to it. So we knew that we couldn't beat them just on power alone. So we just got in behind their wake, biding our time until the right moment. And any time we saw somebody up on the shore, Will would say, switch, we'd oar up, throw the paddles up in the air, catch them, and keep going. Our only way around this canoe was finesse, strategy, to look for the possibilities of how to pass them. The best way is to straighten our route out as much as we could. So we were getting towards the end of the race and a couple bends left in the river. So as we were getting close to the bends in the river, Will and I would pour it on, start digging it, and we were cutting that bend in the river really short, and we were going to do our best, just like in a racing car, to slide them up into the bank of the river. Didn't work. We came down to the last 20 yards of the race, and we were side by side. Will and I were doing our best pouring it on, and even though these two were tired, they were still pouring it on. Came down to the finish line. We lost by 2 whole canoes. We were devastated. Were we still the best on the river? We think so. So what's the point of the story, you say, Pastor Erlen?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure there is a point. It's just a fun story. But I would say this, as we talk about our lives as Christians right now, it's upended, right? And it's different. That sometimes we can feel bad about not being there physically for somebody else. We can feel bad about not doing everything we used to do. But like Will and I in that canoe race, we still knew that we were the best on the river. And like you, struggling to be a Christian in these times and being separated from one another, you're still a good Christian. Mm-hmm. You're still a good person. The circumstances don't change that. And Jordan and I still have a great appreciation for you. We still have a great love for you. And we still wish the best for you. Anything you want to add?
I like the different people that had different techniques down the river, because that also shows how we are so unique. And so, like, they were working together and they were doing it differently than you and your friend were doing it differently. And so I really like how we could all be different and different Christians and use our different gifts. And like, you all were good at canoeing. You have no idea how hard canoeing is.
Oh, I do.
Well, yeah, I guess you do. One time I went down, I canoed with a friend, and we did this all the way down the river. But, like, we got there. And no matter how we got there still. So we'll get there.
We will get there. In the meantime, we're thinking about you. We're praying with and for you and about you. And we wish you peace.
Have a great week.